Hey you, let me ask you something. Are you a sick and twisted individual always on a quest to discover the finest stories of depravity? The bottom of the barrel type stuff? Are you a fan of the grotesque and the filthy? Well, then you may have just found yourself in the right spot. This video will take you through the absolute absurd comic book world of The Boys. You think the Amazon show pushes the limits? After all, remember this?
Hey. Holy fuck! That was diabolical!
They did use a baby to cut two people in half. Well, wait until you see what's in store for you. Now, this is the source material for the Amazon show The Boys. So if you are interested in the ways in which the source material differs from the show, this is a great resource for you. And we start with part 1, the name of the game. We open with Butcher sitting on a park bench with his obedient bulldog, aptly named Terror, in Washington, D.C., outside of the Capitol building during the fall. Butcher, a confident, dapper-looking fella, a straight shooter who gives exactly 0 fucks and does whatever the hell he wants. I mean, big, massive dick energy on this one. Up in the sky, he spots a group of flying soups and seemingly recognizes one of them. Then we are introduced to Huey, who is this country bumpkin, hillbilly, yokel, tripping over his own feet type of guy on a date with a cute, quirky chick with black framed hipster glasses named Robin. They're at a carnival on a cool, brisk day, and Huey's rambling on about alien conspiracies concerning gay pink aliens who are somehow out to turn us all gay. Strange to say the least, but for whatever reason, Robin seems to be into it, and both are laughing about and having a good time. We witness a compassionate kiss. Aww. Now, I don't know about you guys, but to me, this version of Robin seems to be much better. Not sure why in the show they turned her into some kind of nagging girlfriend, constantly questioning Huey's manhood. I suppose the writers thought he needed an additional reason to join up with Butcher, because his girlfriend being carelessly and inconsiderately pulverized into a pile of blood wasn't sufficient reason enough. I suppose he also needed to be a weakling who thought he wasn't man enough. Anyways, so Robin and Huey are sharing this compassionate moment where the only thing that exists in this world is them. Then all of a sudden, a second goes by and here comes A-Train blasting through Robin, leaving Huey still holding her severed arms. He must have been holding them pretty tight. We take a break from the action and witness Butcher arriving at Rayner's, the CIA director's office, for a little R&R as you do. Talk about a hate fuck. I mean, look at that face. Put some horns on this guy and he's the devil incarnate. My God. Man, Butcher must have some stuff to work out. And this is the hero of the story? Back to the action. Looks like A-Train was in pursuit of another soup when he pulverized Robin. Huey is understandably shocked and freaking out as he just witnessed somebody he cares about instantaneously turned into a pile of blood and gore. And because, I mean, let's face it, Robin was probably the only girl that could have loved this face. Next up, we learn a little bit more about the relationship between Butcher and Rayner. Butcher's intent is to gather information from Rayner, and we, as the reader, learn that this world contains more than 200,000 soups. And Butcher's job is to keep an eye on them in intelligence gathering. Butcher discusses his team, including the Frenchman, somebody with the unfortunate nickname of Mother's Milk. There must be a story behind that. And the female. Butcher discusses needing a replacement for somebody named Mallory, as he was at least partly responsible for getting his grandchildren killed. We also hear a reference to the legend. More on that later. Huey is then greeted at his rundown, messy apartment by the soup's legal team, a bunch of slick yes men who are seeking to provide compensation to Huey for Robin's death in exchange for not pursuing further legal action. Huey doesn't look so good and has partaken in a bit of the reefer.
Smoke weed every day.
Next up, we are introduced to Mr. Kessler at his small, indiscreet office. Kessler looks like a man that has made a few mistakes in his life and has numerous regrets. He kind of reminds me of John Turturro, and I think we can all imagine what he was up to. You know, playing the five-finger shuffle, making the bald man cry, shaking hands with Mr. Winky, all while at work. Can't even wait to get home. Jesus, Kessler, you fucking cringe lord. Unfortunate for him, he is interrupted by Butcher. Kessler obviously has reasons to fear Butcher as we witness him cowardly trying to escape through the window. Butcher is too smart for this though, and catches him in the act. And this is where Butcher learns of Robin's gruesome death and the heartbroken Huey. Butcher is intrigued to learn that Huey did not immediately demand compensation for Robin's death. The Name of the Game, Part 2. Butcher runs into Huey sitting on a bench in a busy park. Huey is still visibly distraught and sad about Robin. The two bond over their shared hatred for Shih Tzus and inconsiderate people who did not clean up after their dog's shit. Butcher then sicks his bulldog Terror on the Shih Tzu, because there's nothing funnier than animals R-wording each other. We are finally introduced to the mysterious Frenchman, a sort of helpless romantic, a tad psychopathic, yet genial, political mind, and an easily provoked dramatic individual who has difficulty controlling his emotions to the point of hysteria. Oh, and his superpower, or at least a part of his superpower, is that he has a nose like a bloodhound, as we will see later. He is minding his own business, sitting in a restaurant, and overhears a group of wannabe Chads making fun of him. I'm assuming the term surrender monkey is a reference to the French during World War II, and cheese eater not quite so sure about. The French like cheese, I guess? Anyways, this gets a bit under his skin, and seeing red, the Frenchman leaps out of his seat like a volatile raging bull foaming at the mouth, and the Chads come to immediately regret their callous actions. Afterwards, Butcher then casually strolls in, and the Frenchman's demeanor does a complete 180, and he lovingly embraces Butcher as if he's an old friend. We come back to Butcher and Huey in the park, being jovial about animal rape, which puts a goofy as hell smile on Huey's face. Maybe the first time he smiles since Robin's unforeseen death. Butcher admits he knows who Huey is, he knows about Robin, and how Huey was greeted by the Soup's legal team, and has a proposition for him. Butcher exclaims, "I used to run a team, had the job of stopping the sort of shit that happened to Robin. Or if we couldn't stop it, we made sure the guilty party was in no condition to do it again." Butcher advises he's trying to put together a team. Now we are introduced to the female, a quiet yet insane woman who looks a little somber and deceptively weak and timid. We see her knocking on a door of a middle-class suburban home with two individuals bickering inside. They open the door and comment on how she looks like an innocuous individual not worth taking seriously. She doesn't speak. Swiftly and unexpectedly, she lashes out and attacks the two, decapitating one, leaving behind a bloodbath, all while Butcher watches from the street. Back to Butcher's meeting with Huey. Huey learns Butcher works for the CIA. Huey asks about Area 51 and the Illuminati and various conspiracies. Butcher shuts that shit down immediately. Huey, not even in their wildest dreams could those tits run the world. Butcher asks Huey to work for him because Huey is somebody who felt the disdain and carelessness the Soups have for normal, everyday humans. Leveraging the death of Robin and the ability of the Soups to be able to just walk away from that and get away with something like that. Butcher moves on to his next potential recruit at his home in the suburbs. An uptight brute of a man nicknamed Mother's Milk, MM for short. He is apprehensive at first, claiming to be making a life for himself, helping out kids in a community center. We learn the two have history, and the brute is holding back because of what happened with Mallory and his grandkids. We learn that he cannot control his daughter, Janine, and is separated from her mother. Butcher excuses himself, lying about needing a piss, but instead approaches Janine and her friends outside. Butcher asks for a word with Janine, and a man she is with brandishes a firearm, attempting to scare Butcher, only to have Butcher snatch that gat and break it. Then turns to belittle the guy by exclaiming a Glock is a wanker's gun. Janine's friends take off. Butcher and Janine exchange words about how she is mistreating her father. Butcher disparages her mother, teaching the reader that her mom is not someone who cares about her daughter, and her father, MM, is better for her and deserves respect. We jump back to Huey having a nighttime stroll on a bridge and having second thoughts on joining up with Butcher's team, thinking himself to not be capable of that line of work. Butcher reminds Huey of how careless the Supes are by suggesting A-Train was laughing his bollocks off about killing Robin and how he knows this because he bugged the Seven's headquarters. Butcher guilts Huey by suggesting it will happen to someone else unless they do something about it. Butcher throws Huey some cash and tells him to meet him in New York City. Well into the story now, and we finally get a glimpse of the Seven and their headquarters, which is a floating building in the sky. We see Homelander, the head Supe, and a guy who looks like the Third Reich's dream child, welcoming Starlight to the Seven. Starlight, a pretty, blonde, petite, and highly Christian woman, was invited into the Seven by winning a trial. Starlight shows childlike admiration towards Homelander, believing him to be kind and wise. Starlight, with a twinkle in her eye, tells Homelander about her previous life with the Capes for Christ of the Junior Ministries. The Cherry, Part 1. First, we quickly see Huey and Butcher meet up in the South Bronx, New York City. Then we immediately jump to Homelander, showing Starlight his little peepee, aka his member, his prick, shaft, tool, jig, joystick. I'm talking about his dick, people. He straight up shows Starlight his little pecker and kindly suggests that she sucks it. You know, as you do when welcoming a new employee. Starlight is understandably taken aback, but Homelander don't back down. It's like he expects it. A-Train and Black Noir come onto the scene, and Starlight thinks herself to be saved. But instead, they just join in on the party and gang up on her. Great guys. I mean, real sweet guys. I do not have the words to convey how sweet these gentlemen are. The three use Starlight's potential position in the Seven to blackmail her. Homelander cracks a joke about Bill Clinton. So Starlight's like, alright, I guess I'm gonna suck some D now. We jump to Mother's Milk, Frenchie, the female, Huey, and Butcher, referred to as the boys from now on, meeting up together for their first time. They set up headquarters in a rundown, sloppy office building on Broadway. MM is not impressed and calls an individual named Kessler, who they refer to as Monkey, to fix up the place. We now switch scenes and witness Starlight's pretty head buried in the toilet and mascara running down her despairing face as she just puked her guts out. And when she has completed expelling the three men's spunk from her poor stomach, she runs into Queen Maeve at the mirror in the bathroom. Now, Maeve looks like a woman straight out of the Amazon. Starlight proceeds to gush over her, telling her about how she looked up to her as a child. Maeve reciprocates by telling her to fuck off. Yeah, I bet Starlight is feeling super lucky now about making it into the Seven. Back to Butcher and his team. He proposes a plan with the intent to show the Supes that the boys are back in business and introduces a group of Supes to the team named the Young Americans, explaining that they are a bunch of goody two-shoes with ties to Republican youth and evangelist groups. He also introduces another group of Supes named the Teenage Kicks. An edgier bunch, Butcher and MM exclaim that breaking a few of these members isn't going to turn many heads. Next up, we visit the Teenage Kicks at their, what looks to be a frat house out of an 80s comedy where a massive orgy is happening. Huey is posted up in a building across the street gathering intel. The Cherry, Part 2. We turn to Homelander calling a meeting of the Seven aboard their headquarters. He introduces Starlight as a replacement for Lamplighter. She sheepishly exclaims that she is proud to be here, and A-Train mocks her by making a blowjob gesture. Classy. We meet the Deep, who is upset about merchandise percentages and starts a big fight about why the big three, Homelander, Maeve, and Noir, get a bigger percentage in merchandising profit. Starlight is beside herself. And who in the hell is this alien-looking dude? Back to the Teenage Kicks, we see that Butcher and the team watching the frat house, and the owner of the building allowed Butcher to bug the place. Huey witnesses the callousness of how the Supes treat the working girls, working out their deepest and most depraved sexual desires on them without caring about any repercussions. Huey notices the girls taking a drug called Blue in order to keep up with and sustain the Supes. We turn back to the Seven's headquarters, and Homelander is forcefully browbeating A-Train and making him look like a complete bitch for mocking Starlight and acting a fool in front of a man that was sitting in on their meeting, who has influence over their money. Starlight, hiding around the corner, witnesses this. We come to another meeting between Butcher and Raynor, where they both get their rocks off, of course, and Raynor provides Butcher some gear. We learn Raynor is the director of the CIA. Huey and Frenchie are gathering more surveillance on all the debauchery committed by the Supes. The job seems to be growing on Huey. The gear that Raynor gave to Butcher was a shot of Compound V, which Butcher forcefully injects into Huey without notice. Butcher tells Huey it gives him power to stand up against the Supes, but it only lasts for a few days, and a side effect is that it turns your poop blue. Except the pure stuff. The pure stuff makes power permanent, and this substance is why Supes exist. Some bloke thought it up in the 30s. Huey is visibly and audibly upset, and threatens to leave and go home back to Glasgow. Cherry, Part 3. Huey meets Starlight at a park bench on an autumn day, but is oblivious to the fact that she is Starlight. They subtly discuss their situations. Huey wanting to take a job but doesn't like some of the people involved. Starlight being pressured into doing something that she doesn't want to do, like suck some dick. But blah 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 blah. Huey decides to go back to the team. Butcher and Huey share a moment discussing male masturbation and a little self-deprecation, as guys do. We turn to the Seven watching a news broadcast of one of the Teenage Kicks members, Shoutout, coming out publicly as being gay. Homelander thinks someone is behind this. Starlight suggests they reach out to the Teenage Kicks and show support. Homelander dismisses this and advises Starlight that Vought, the company that controls the Seven, made Starlight a new revealing costume. The Teenage Kicks receive an email advising they know who exposed their member for being gay, and they track Butcher and his team down. A fight ensues right in the middle of the street. They're not subtle about it at all. Huey finds himself in trouble, getting caught by a psychopathic-looking Supe, threatening to put him through a wall.
I will put you through that fucking wall!
We're outside, genius! There is no wall!
Then I will build one, and I will fucking put you through it!
Huey's power caused by the Compound V Butcher injected him with earlier becomes active, and the scared Huey unwittingly punches through the stomach of the psychopath and kills him. Butcher wordly shouts that he's not supposed to kill them. We turn back to the Seven, who are acknowledging the fight, and discover that Butcher is back. We discover that they have history with Butcher and know who he is, and how he is responsible for Lamplighter no longer being a part of the Seven. Back to the boys' headquarters, they are trying to determine who leaked the information to the Teenage Kicks. They turn to the television to witness the funeral of the Supe Huey killed. Of course, the news makes the Kicks member out to be a hero and portrays this as a tragic loss and a sacrifice for freedom against time terrorists. Huey thinks of leaving again because of the grief of killing someone and getting away with it, just like A-Train did with Robin. Then Butcher gets serious and tells Huey of how a Supe raped his wife, Becky, and she in turn got pregnant. Butcher didn't know this until after he read it in her diary. And one day he came into their bedroom and she was on the bed with a Supe fetus crawling out of her dead body, and he had to beat it to death with a lampstand. Wow, so I guess that's why Butcher is the way that he is. Butcher proceeds to tell Huey about the Supe's casualty allowance. He explains that the government and military allow the Supes and Vought to do what they want because they fear them, and that's why Butcher has the job that he has. But now the lines are blurred, and the VP of the United States is Supe friendly. We turn to the Seven having a press conference introducing Starlight as a replacement for Lamplighter, and she is wearing her new suit. Homelander plays the good guy and takes this opportunity to remind the people that they, the Seven, are watching out for them and are there to keep them safe. And this brings us to the end of this video, and stay tuned for more.